Hey everyone, my name is Jarg, and today I'm going to be giving my review about the first 30 levels that I've experienced in Final Fantasy XIV. So, this is a longer video than my usual ones, so we're going to get right into it. So, first off is the character customization. It has a lot of great options to make your character from, the typical stuff like your height, your hair, your face, your eye color, all that stuff that's in every MMORPG, but it also has some nice little details like the muscle tone, which I really enjoy. Making your character super buff is pretty fun for me. Then there's like adding tattoos and face paint, some cool options. I really like these little options that are away from the typical stuff because it makes your character very unique. So that's some of the stuff I enjoy for the character customization. The questing in Final Fantasy XIV is your typical, theme park MMORPG questing. You collect this, collect that, kill so many enemies, all the typical stuff that's in other big MMORPGs like World of Warcraft. One of my favorite things about Final Fantasy XIV is the fates. So if you don't know, the fates are basically these areas that you come across that require you to kill, a bunch of enemies, and then every time you kill an enemy, the bar fills, and once it's completely filled, you get a bunch of XP and gil. So if you don't know, also gil is basically, like gold or money. So I love these because I can rely on farming fates rather than just doing all the boring side quests. I'm not a fan of side quests. They always, just make me really bored. I've never really had enjoyment doing them. So the fact that I can just do the main storyline and do fates while I'm questing, like on the side, makes it really enjoyable because then I don't fall behind. So with the questing comes the storyline, which is arguably one of the strongest elements of any Final Fantasy game. And Final Fantasy XIV is no different. Playing up to level 30, I've grown attached to the story, and honestly, if I enjoyed nothing else, I'd probably just play it just for the main story because it's very engaging. It kind of pulls at your heartstrings, a little bit. You get a little emotional. It's just a really great story. One of the points I'm on the edge with for Final Fantasy XIV is the combat. The combat is pretty slow paced with very long cooldowns and cast times on certain abilities, which after playing games like Black Desert Online or Blade and Soul, it makes it very hard for me to not get bored pretty fast. Over the course of playing the game up to 30, I've come to enjoy it a little bit more because I actually have more abilities, and combined with doing dungeons, I realized there's a lot of mechanics you have to watch out for. Still, I think the combat can turn people off from the game like it did for me until I decide, I'll just give it a full chance. I think it's one point that makes people feel like they don't want to play it because it is very boring in the early game. I know in the new Stormblood expansion coming this summer, they're updating the combat. I know it's not a complete overhaul or anything like that, but I've heard they're changing some of the cooldowns for abilities. Not sure on that if that's confirmed or not, but I've heard that. Hopefully it'll make the early game less boring because I think it would draw in more people. Also, every person that's played this game to max level has basically told me the combat gets way better at level 50 and 60. So I'm pretty excited to keep questing. Hopefully I got past the most boring parts of the combat, and now it'll keep getting better and better, from what everyone's told me at least. This is probably my favorite part of Final Fantasy XIV, and one I wish that more MMORPGs would adopt, which is how they do their class system. So basically you have one character that can play any class in the game without making a second character or anything. So this means basically just by changing your weapon, you can change to any class you want. So I plan to have at least one tank, one healer, and DPS. I really like that idea. I love the system because it's perfect for people who want to try all the classes, but they might not have the time or even the willpower to quest on a whole new character, level them all the way up, and do all that. So I really enjoy this system. I think it's something all MMORPGs should have. It's one of my favorite things for sure. Next is the dungeons. So out of the good amount of dungeons I've completed in Final Fantasy XIV, I've enjoyed most of them. They're some of my favorite actually in the MMORPG genre already, and every day I can't wait to log in and do my daily dungeon roulette. That's one of my favorite things. The dungeons really emphasize the need for a DPS, a healer, and a tank. People call that the Holy Trinity. That's something I really enjoy. I know some people don't like that, but I enjoy the DPS, healer, tank trinity. I really like that in MMORPGs. I feel like a clear role is really important, and I really like that. So the bosses are pretty challenging, there's actually a lot of mechanics that you have to follow, and if you're a tank like me, your main class, a tank, you actually have to know what the bosses are doing because you have to learn their mechanics or else you're just gonna get screwed over. So my favorite dungeon so far is the Thousands Malls. I really love that one. Last is the subscription for Final Fantasy XIV. This is something that's pretty rare in MMORPGs nowadays. Really the only popular ones is this one in World of Warcraft that still even have the option, and maybe of course Elder Scrolls, but I mean you can just buy it, you don't have to have a subscription. So I know nowadays most of them just are free, but when they're free they usually come along with buds, and they always usually have a pay-to-win cash shop, and usually that ends up making you spend more than you would have just for the sub for, you know, like Final Fantasy XIV. Like for example, Blade and Soul, I've probably spent, you know, at least $40 or $50 a month usually, when I could have just spent $15 for a sub. So even though a sub kind of sounds like, wow, I have to pay every month, you usually end up spending less than you would have for a free-to-play game. So it costs about $13 a month, around there, 13 to 15. To me, it's well worth the price tag. The game is super polished, and it probably has the most fair cash shop I've ever seen. Like, literally, it's super fair. There's nothing pay to win. There's just basically cosmetics in there. It's really good. Yeah, for the price, I just think it's very good. Definitely worth investing $13 a month. I'm excited to keep playing the game and reach level 60 and get ready for Stormblood. I hope this review has helped you guys decide whether you want to start it. It's honestly a solid game at a fair monthly price. It's definitely worth your time. I will say that you'll probably have to endure questing through the boring combat for a little bit. The early level is easily the hardest part of the game. Once you get to like level 15 and you're doing dungeons and stuff, it gets way more enjoyable. So I would just recommend trying to slug through it. Maybe listen to some music or something while you're playing just to kind of get your mind off the boring combat. And then once you get to like 15, as I said, it gets way better. So I really recommend this game, and I hope you guys enjoyed.